Story 1. I spotted a neighbor of mine one day at the local art gallery presenting something, and I thought it was weird that he had the same name as a wing of that gallery. Story 2. My fiance's uncle is a millionaire. He's a chief financial officer at a local but also pretty large food company. He's got that corporate charisma personality. I have no idea how much he's worth, but he definitely has a lot of money. One thing I've realized is that everybody tells me how rich he is, but he never talks about money personally, and when it is mentioned, he deflects to a different topic. He drives a Honda Accord. He and his family live in a decent but not flashy house whatsoever, and he portrays the idealistic humble millionaire. I grew up working class and rather poor, so to see somebody be absolutely humble about their finances is admirable. Story 3. When I was a student in high school, most of my classmates were upper middle class at a minimum. One classmate blew most of these kids out of the water because his parents legitimately couldn't possibly spend it all money. His family casually paid for the entire robotics team to go to multiple competitions as if that was a totally normal thing to do. Story 4. Travel memories. I went to an affluent private high school, and I was not like my peers. The first week of every new school year or return from break was unbearable for me. How was Europe or Asia? My dad only got us a trip to Aspen. I wanted Switzerland. And the worst was, what do you mean you and your family just stayed home? Story 5. Me complaining about how tiny airline seats have gotten over the years. Someone says, "Oh, why don't you just fly first class?" Story 6. They have no idea about the cost of things. A woman purchased a bag of artisan chocolate that was $5 at my work this week and was surprised when she was told the total. She said, "Oh, I thought it would be at least $20. Like, the Arrested Development quote about the cost of bananas is so real. Estimated time of arrival. Our shop is close to a wealthy neighborhood. We get a lot of these kinds of customers. Story 7. Rich people will talk about money, but truly wealthy people never talk about money. They do not talk about how much stuff costs. They do not gossip about how well their portfolio is doing, and in general, they just stay away from the topic. They just mysteriously slip the server their card to pay for the table before anyone realizes. Story 8. An empty garage. They don't need those materials because they don't do work around the house. They hire someone to do it. Story 9. Depends on how they got rich, but someone with over $20 million I find is very confident and always looks good. Some people won't wear the same thing twice, even if it's designer, which I find weird. Story 10. You can usually tell with confidence. People who have wealth, not even wealth really, just an average amount of good money, like a couple million, have confidence. I have yet to meet someone worth 7 figures or more who is an anxious mess. I think the stress of daily life and feeling like you could be homeless tomorrow is a big part of why we see so many anxious people on Reddit. All the people I know who have done really well, though, they're all confident. In fact, I would say my confidence has gotten higher as I no longer have to worry about having a place to live or what will happen if I don't work for a month. It's just this sense of freedom that is pretty empowering. Story 11. Involvement in volunteer community services, charities, arts organizations, children's hospitals, or other medical specialty organizations, especially membership on a board of those activities. Most working individuals don't have the time or energy for that these days, nor the money for transportation to attend all those activities. Story 12. They emphasize that there are much more important things in life than money. In my mind, I'm too busy making money to survive to experience the more important things in life. Story 13. Multi-generational clothing or things. A landowner family who had most of the highways named after them had a thing for the gifts they received through time. Middle school graduation. A silver Rolex and the expensive ones. High school graduation. A trip to Europe for 2 months fully paid and a full set of luggage worth $20,000 to $30,000, from purse to container matching. College graduation. A leather band Patek Philippe watch and 6 Seville rose suits for summer and winter. I saw 3 generations owning/getting this, and it was actually kind of cool. They also all wore Gucci loafers from kids to granddad and had Hermes ties only. As a friend of the family, the mom would come back from Europe and give her son and his top 3 to 5 friends great gifts like matching Louis Vuitton wallets, before they became tacky or Gucci keychains. I still have mine somewhere. Story 14. Someone I know who I suspect is far wealthier than they let on. My suspicion is based on the state of their pantry and fridge in relation to the rest of their life. It's kind of crazy how much the cost of your food week in, week out can affect your financial situation long term. Story 15. One buddy I know would always casually mention his visits to really famous people's homes in the area, his family's chauffeur, or his weekly flights out to random countries. The craziest part was that he would mention these things so casually as if everyone lives like that, and he was never arrogant about it. He's just never known any different. Story 16. I realized my privilege once when I said to someone that something tastes like airplane food. That day, I understood that not everyone gets to travel long distances, particularly often enough to know what airplane food tastes like. Story 17. Using a season as a verb. Where do you winter? Or where do you summer? I did not endear myself to the person who asked me this question for the first time, as the last thing he was expecting was, at home, since, I was 11 years old. Story 18. The flat good for you, that's great, or thoroughly unimpressed attitude towards any wealth flex. I have never seen my dad impressed by wealth he has seen in real life. Always drove a used vehicle at least 10 to 20 years old, up until recently. Quietly owns 5 expensive properties, uses 2, effectively gave one to his down-on-his-luck brother and his wife, one is his office building, and another is just a valuable plot of lakefront land with nothing on it but trees. A plane, a boat worth more than the house I live in and the last one combined, owns multiple collector cars, and has enough money set aside for my siblings and I that we could afford to retire. In our 20s, we are in our 30s now, and live comfortable lives with money left over to pay for houses, college tuition for our hypothetical kids and grandkids, and still go beyond that. He is a generous, kind man. He has helped more people go to college and set up more trusts than I know about for strangers, his foster kids, or random other kids he cares for. He has kept the bills paid for plenty of my friends when they could not make ends meet. Everything I listed screams wealth, but he never mentions them except to me and sometimes my brother. But his refusal to be impressed when somebody rolls up in a fancy car or goes on a fancy vacation screams volumes. Story 19. Being able to get out of work without much issue or explanation. They're that valuable. Not knowing the most basic, normal people fool. Sometimes an expression of permanent smugness, never mind what got them in that situation. Story 20. For the really wealthy people I know, it's humility that stands out. I barely hear them talking high and mighty about themselves or how much their things are worth. Story 21. For a woman, really nice, clean nails. Not flashy and colorful, but really well kept, glossy and shiny. It's like they had the time and money to afford really good treatment regularly. Story 22. Children do not go to daycare. They have the money to hire someone in-house. You can act all snooty about the pores working at the daycare, but we know you are bluffing. Story 23. One thing in corporate culture. The younger professionals, say under 30, who have an ease in speaking the language of corporate and are extremely relaxed liaising with senior management, seem experienced beyond their years. They seem to inherently understand the corporate politics. I've worked with a few, and they always have a parent who was a general manager, a senior, or come from that world. They are never on the back foot or justify themselves in their work. On the other side, people who don't grow up in this world have the impression that they're always trying to prove themselves, even when they're just as or more capable, experienced, talented, etc., than those whose families have that background. The ease is the difference. Story 24. I remember a podcast where Brady Heron conducted an interview with a billionaire. Brady noticed that the person would light a cigarette, take one puff of it, then put it out. He did that several times, never smoking the same cigarette more than once. Story 25. An interesting one I've noticed, though I don't know how universal this is, all the favors they do need to be explained away. Like a rich individual asked me to drive his car down to the beach for $100. I was 18, this was ages ago. I said, absolutely, that's amazing. And he made certain to clarify that it was just cheaper than letting his driver do it. He was being generous, but only because it also benefited him, like I was fortunate to be a part of his spending. It was weird. Story 26. They have got that relaxed vibe. Easily turn down plans without stress. always ready to treat friends, and seemed to know all about things like truffle hunting in Tuscany or zero-gravity yoga. Story 27. They emphasize the importance of time and not money. They don't ask how much. It's always, how long? Story 28. They don't know how to cook for themselves, clean, or do any kind of maintenance. Often, they refer to going somewhere abroad due to seasonal temperatures. Story 29. I went on a trip to Japan and was walking around a big mall with friends until we saw some kind of random dude in a t-shirt surrounded by bodyguards in the Gundam section. Taking a closer look, it was Post Malone. Story 30. Not a personal experience, but hearing from friends who have literally been living paycheck to paycheck, not being able to afford toothpaste, with instant ramen being too expensive, etc., and said rich people being shocked at the thought. Story 31. Usually, their topics of interest vary. Wealthy individuals often discuss money, investments, and vacations more than the average person. Story 32. The very few people I know who are extremely wealthy are some of the nicest people I've met. Very kind and quietly confident. They're also very generous and helpful to their family and friends. I remember meeting my boss's cousin once in a factory that he owned when I was in my early 20s. I was only there for the day to use some of their equipment. He knew I was coming and knew I was massively into cars. He approached me immediately when I arrived to introduce himself, and he said he had something to show me. He brought me out to his Porsche 911 Turbo S, threw me the keys, sat in the passenger seat, and told me to bring it for a spin. So awesome. When we got back, he gave me a tour and spent another couple of hours with me to show me how to operate the machines I needed to use. Being the owner of the company, he was already stretched for time. I later heard he didn't go home until 1 a.m. that night, catching up on the work he missed when he had been going around with me all afternoon. Story 33. They have so much time. Last weekend, I changed the mower blades, mowed my lawn, mowed my dad's lawn, replaced the NOx sensor on my truck, took my truck for smog testing, went to the Department of Motor Vehicles for plates, refilled my propane tanks, filed my taxes, late, and went to the grocery store. If I were rich, I would have had nothing to do. Lawn service, new truck, renew plates online, propane delivery service, Instacart. When I tell people I can't afford to golf, it's not that I can't afford the equipment or greens fees. I can't afford 4 to 5 hours on a weekend. Story 34. The richest person I know is extremely gracious. She showed me a lot of kindness and understanding despite us being worlds apart. She is also very family-oriented and has 2 wonderful sons who are equally as gracious. You would never know they are among the richest people in their country if you met them on the street. Instead, you would be blown away by how nice and warm they are. Story 35. People that would rather pay than take the time to deal with an issue because their time is worth more than the issue itself. Paying too much for auto insurance? It doesn't matter, just pay the bill anyway. It's better than taking hours out of the day to shop around every year and change all the information. Got an unexpected fee from the doctor's office that insurance should have covered? Don't call, just pay the charge and move on with life. Story 36. When people have relatively relaxed attitudes about things that would normally stress someone out, for example, I've worked at a couple of chaotic startups, and the people who were the most nonchalant about bad management and instability in the companies always turned out to be rich kids whose lives wouldn't be affected at all if they got laid off or the company went under. People who didn't have big safety nets, myself included, always seemed to be more mentally affected by these environments. Story 37. When someone is born rich, you can typically tell by their attitude and charisma. Conversely, someone who goes from poor to rich may display arrogance and ignorance. Story 38. Quality of the food they eat, or rather, the amount of different types of food they have tried without seeming like a food enthusiast. Story 39. The skin on their face. If people come from money, they have almost no wrinkles until they are very old. Anyway, no frown lines or signs of aging of any sort. You can see an easy life written naturally all over people's faces. Story 40. So many comments about how admirable it is that these rich folks never talked about money. Why? Talk about money. Help others understand it better. Keep them from making massive money mistakes by giving advice on how best to use it. If you learn something helpful, share it. Story 41. I went to my college roommate's hometown for the holidays, and upon driving around, I noticed that his last name was on street signs, libraries, and parks. Story 42. Every time I meet someone who is put together but doesn't wear flashy clothes or jewelry, is knowledgeable of culture and other countries but not cocky, has a great personality and is very sociable, is giving, and drives a modest car in good shape, I get the feeling they might be really rich. In my experience, I think this has proven to be true 8 out of 10 times.